So, I don't know what's going on here. If we're actually broadcasting, I don't see, it doesn't give me any indication that anybody's watching, and there's no chat. And if I get knocked off again, then I'll go up to the house. We'll just bring the whole thing up to the house and try the internet there, which has a mind of its own, as you know from last Saturday's class. We couldn't broadcast. And it's kind of, because I do so much broadcasting, it is a problem, and I'm trying to resolve it with faster internet. But I don't really think it's the speed, because this internet's really fast. It's 12 megabytes per second. When I left 6 years ago, I think we were at 1.5 or 3, and we never had a problem. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with... And this is data, it's not even with my company. Anyway, we'll try it again. So I think it's important that if it's not your nature, if you're not able to do something in a certain way, that you do it in the way that is most natural for you, that is in accordance with your nature, and that you normally will feel right, and not lament that I can't do it like this other devotee, or I can't get the same results. You may not be able to get the same results because you're a different person, but you can get your own results, and a lot of times you'll get results that person can't get. Maybe overall they'll get bigger results or more results, but in certain areas you have your specific abilities and talents, and you'll get results in those areas. So it's really unfortunate if you try to imitate someone that you can't imitate, and try to be like someone you can't be like, and then not get the results you could have gotten if you just would have followed your own path, so to speak. So it's something that affects our consciousness. And it's a way to remedy any feelings of envy we may have, because okay, now I can move. Any feelings of envy we may have, because a person is doing so well and we're not, and we don't know how to deal with it. Like you may see someone who's just, their nature is different, and because of their nature is different, that nature is producing their success. It's just how they are. They don't have to try to be that way. But for you to be like that, you really have to try, and it may be unnatural. And so when you realize, I don't have that nature, I can't imitate it, you therefore can consider, well, what is exactly my nature, and how can I utilize that best and be satisfied? Even though maybe I'd like to be like him, but I never will be because it's not my nature. Or maybe I can be in the future. Maybe in 10 or 20 years I can develop some of his nature through advancing in Krishna consciousness, or working on myself, or working on developing certain skills. Then you can be satisfied with who you are, and then you can employ that nature and those skills as best as possible in Krishna's service, and then be satisfied with the results. In earlier days of ISKCON, and I'm sure in some places in the world today, it may be thought that the position you achieve externally, the post you achieve, equates with your spiritual advancement. So if you're more spiritually advanced, you should have a higher position in ISKCON. And sometimes that's true. You're given more responsibility because you're advancing. But it also may be due to your natural qualities. And you may not be, for example, a manager. And you shouldn't think, well, I've been a devotee for 10 years and I'm not managing anything, then therefore I'm not making spiritual advancement, or vice versa. I'm doing a lot of management, therefore I am spiritually advanced. And the converse was true, that I've achieved a very high level in my varna or ashram, and therefore that makes me more advanced, when it doesn't necessarily mean you are more advanced. It may mean you are, but it may not mean it. So it's a matter of being satisfied with who we are, and then taking advantage of who we are to do the best service we can from Krishna, and that should neutralize any feelings of envy we have, and therefore we can get inspired. Oh, you do this so nicely. I'm really bad at that, but you inspire me to do this nicely, and this is what I do well. There's an example of this also, which is it's kind of nice. In Los Angeles, I don't know what year it was. It could have been 1974, 1975, 76. When we were organizing the Christmas Marathon, at the same time, the Fate Museum had a deadline. They were building the museum in Detroit, and they built the museum in Los Angeles. And I don't know if there was a deadline for Detroit or Los Angeles. I think it may have been Detroit. And so they couldn't go out on book distribution. In previous years, even they would go out on book distribution. Like everything in LA would shut down, and for Christmas, for a week or 2 or 10 days, everyone would go out on book distribution. And we would distribute lots of books and raise lots of money to pay for the books. So this year they couldn't go out, and they said that we're so inspired by the book distributors that we also decided to have a marathon to make sure that this project has been lagging and we want to get it done. And you know how those things are. They tend to never get done. So we're going to make a deadline and get it done. And then they said, we are inspired, you inspired us to do a marathon in the Fate Museum. So the artists were not the best book distributors, the book distributors were not the best artists, but the artists got inspired by the book distributors. So the artist didn't think, oh, we are not good book distributors, or the artist didn't think, we should just forget the Fate Museum and distribute books, because that's really what should be done, even though we're artists. They put it in perspective. So you can get inspired by someone that you're so-called envious of if you don't try to imitate, but you put it in perspective of what you could do. So this person is doing really well in various areas, and you can take that as an inspiration to excel in your area. And if you want to excel in the ways he's excelling, then we go back to my other point. Don't think that you have to be him. Be you, and do it in the way where you will have the most power. People will like you when you're you. They won't like you when you're trying to be him or her. It just doesn't work. There was a TED Talk. It got like 6 million views, That's a lot for any talk, If a TED Talk gets 1 million, that's a lot. If it gets 500,000, it's really good. Some of them only get like 6,000. And this was just a very raw and real talk about a person's failures in life and so on. And people related to it so well. She was just so honest. So, that may be your nature, and you might see someone who's very successful, who's very heavy and powerful. But there's also power in vulnerability. And you may not be this great, powerful speaker or CEO of some big company or some big marketing group, but you may be a very real person, very raw, very relatable. And therefore that's who you are and that's what you do. And people will appreciate you as you are. So I think that's really important. Within our movement, as I'm saying, that's also can be a problem. We compare ourselves and we think I should be in a certain place. Oh, this devotee does this, they do kirtan this way, they do puja this way, they know the shastra this way, I should be like that. Some of you will never know the shastra as well as some other devotees. Some of you will never do kirtan as well as some other devotees. Some of you will never just deities exactly as well as other devotees. Some of you will never know as many shlokas as some other devotees. Some of you will never manage as well as some other devotees. Some of you will never be as creative or artistic in art, video, multimedia production as others. And that's okay. You just be you. And the good news is our Shastra says it doesn't matter, and we talked about that last week. So now I think we can read. It appears that the internet's still going. I know people are watching, but if you're making any comments, chat, I don't see it, and I don't know how to get it. And It's not showing me that anyone's watching, so I don't know what to do. I can press this. This gives me chat. I can say Haribol, but I don't even know if I'll see the chat come up. Yeah, my chat came. It says Hari. It says hair oil. Hari oil. Yeah, we need hair oil, don't we? Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I don't see your comments. Maybe Facebook went into a mode where I can't tell if anybody's there, but I'm assuming you're there. And if you're not, then I don't know what to say, and you will see the video. Now I'm going to continue reading where we left off a while ago. If my computer is willing to open you. Okay, this fits with what we're talking about. Don't forget your Hari oil. There's the message. I said Hari oil. It was supposed to be Hari bowl. Came out to Hari oil. It's a new business idea. Standards do not have to be set by others or society. Set standards which are achievable in your situation, and don't look at failure personally. Separate yourself from any so-called failings you have. And also in other words, I say so-called because you're labeling it a failure. A failure is a failure, and we all fail, but it doesn't mean you as a person are a failure. This is an extremely toxic way to think, and if you think this way, then you need to ponder why you would allow yourself to think in ways which harm you. Well, there's two problems here. One is the psychological and one is the spiritual. The psychological is you've defined yourself as a failure rather than define the event as a failure. And so if you define yourself as a failure, then you become discouraged. Rather than define the event as a failure, and then you figure out how to succeed, how to do it right the next time. The philosophical problem is that Krishna is not evaluating you by your material abilities. He's not evaluating you by anything material, which would include your body or your birth. And our Shastras, they go quite extensively into downplaying, or we should say destroying the idea that bhakti and birth are connected. I mean, it's helpful if you're born in a Brahmin family, and it's helpful if you're born in a Vaishnava family, obviously, and it is a bit of a problem if you're born outside. But then we have the examples. Thakur Haridas was born Muslim, and he did quite well. And Lord Chaitanya had so many associates appear not in Brahmin families to make this point. And there are many examples of people who were, Prahlad Maharaj, typical example. Just the other day, a devotee was asking me that Lord Shringadev touched Prahlad and said, now you're purified of all contamination. And Prahlad's a pure devotee, Bhagavad, Mahajan, how was he purified of contamination? Well, he was born in the family of great demon. So he was born of the blood of Hiranyakashipu. So some contamination, but it wasn't an impediment. Jagai and Madai were Brahmins that fall into this very degraded life, and it didn't become an impediment. The mercy is so much more powerful than any material obstacles. So you can never say I can't be a pure devotee because of something material. You can say I can't be a pure devotee because I don't want to. That definitely would be the cause of not becoming a pure devotee, but not external causes, which you could. In other words, you have everything. You have Shastra, you have Guru, you have Srila Prabhupada, you probably have Guru, you have Sangha, you have access to so much facility. So there's nothing material that will stop you. It's only your own self that would stop you. So if you fail at something, it has nothing to do with whether or not you can become Krishna conscious. Now, in some rare cases, you may let your spiritual master down and displease him because you promised you would do something and you didn't. That's another point. That's another philosophical point. Pleasure of the Guru is everything. But we're talking here generically your birth and your education and your family and so forth. It doesn't have any significant bearing on your bhakti. Now, as I was saying, what if you were born as a devotee? Well, that's a great advantage. Doesn't that have bearing? It does. It just means you've got a head start, it's advantageous. But what we're saying is that if you weren't, it doesn't bar you from becoming a pure devotee. Obviously, if it's like you want to learn an instrument. If you start at the age of 5, obviously you're going to be better, it's going to be easier. But it doesn't mean if you start at the age 10 or 15 or 20, if you apply yourself, you can't be as good. Or almost as good. So that's the idea. So if you fail at something, and then you think, oh, I'm a failure because I failed, that is a problem in your thinking. And that needs to be changed. You're not a failure because you failed at something. You failed at something, that's all it is. And people who want to be successful, they just look at it and think, okay, why did I fail? What did I do? What situation was I in that caused me to fail? Or if we're talking here about fall down, how did I end up in a situation where I fell down? How did I allow myself to go into that situation? Of course, when devotees fall down, they feel horrible, they feel guilty and so forth. But you want to go back and look at it and say, okay, well, what steps could I have taken to have avoided that I didn't take? And so you relook at it, and then you feel that, okay, because I've learned something from this, it's unlikely this will happen again. As I feel more clear, or I feel stronger, I'm more clear about what happened, I see I get into a certain consciousness or a certain rut, and when that happens, I need to not allow myself to go with it, but I need to do something else. And so now you're aware of your own patterns, your own consciousness, your own tendencies. And in that awareness, you could see how that led to the fall down, which now you can prevent yourself from. And then you'll feel really good. You feel, oh, this, maybe I had to fall to learn or to realize what to do, what to think, how to be, what not to do, in order that doesn't happen again. Well, that's the way life is. So Prabhupada's, always said, and Rupa Goswami also, utsahan, be enthusiastic, utsahan nishchaya dayat, be faithful, be patient. And why? Because if you don't give up, you'll fail. If you don't give up, you will fail a lot. And if you fail a lot, you will learn a lot. That's just unfortunate reality, but it's true. So if you fail, here's your mantra for today's class. If you fail a lot, you will learn a lot. And if you stay in Krishna consciousness long enough, you will fail a lot, I can guarantee you. And if you fail, I don't want to say, maybe some of you might take exception, fail a lot, but you will fail in certain things. You will slip sometimes. I'm not cursing anybody, but if you stay in Krishna consciousness, you won't, let me put it this way, you won't always do as well as you would like. And sometimes you'll let yourself down, sometimes you may let someone else down. But that's a learning process. And so if you take it that way, then you'll be okay. If you think, well, at least I learned something and I'm moving forward, then you can be positive about it and a little more accepting that coming from my conditioned state, I will sometimes make mistakes. And Prabhupada knew that. He didn't want us to. He encouraged us to be pure and perfect. But when we made mistakes, he grew used to realizing how conditioned we were. And so when we made mistakes, it was like, yeah, what else is new? And not that that was an excuse that Prabhupada was giving or that we should make, but it was, we shouldn't make the mistakes, but we do sometimes. And so that's how we learn. So that's how we see failure. And another aspect of devotional service, which is so interesting, is that the absolute nature of it, that you can do it in your mind and get the full benefit of the service that you haven't been able to do physically within your mind. So when you say there's no material cause for bhakti and there's no material qualification, I think this makes the point even more clear. You can do it in your mind. That's not really material. Okay, the mind's material, all right. But you're not physically doing it and you're getting the benefit. So you might say, well, I never I don't think I could achieve these results, or I couldn't achieve this level of service. Well, you could achieve it in your mind. You could imagine. You've just distributed 100 sets of Srimad Bhagavatams today. And if you think that way, maybe it'll happen someday, or something will happen like that. Or I've built a temple. You're imagining, you're designing the temple. You see what it looks like. I've done this preaching program. So many people came, or we did this festival. So even meditating on it, you get the benefit. So how could there be? What material qualification do you need to imagine an event, a successful event? You don't need one. That's amazing, isn't it? Did you know that? You could get the benefit? You can say, I don't think I'll ever be able to do this, but I would like to meditate on doing it and offer that to Prabhupada and pray that maybe someday I'll be able to do it. That's amazing. That's a real amazing benefit of bhakti. It's all about the heart and intention. That's what Krishna looks at. That's proof. That's what he looks at, because you don't even have to physically manifest it. If the desire is there and you meditate on that service, Krishna accepts that you've done it. Now, just as a side point, that many athletes, that's how they practice. Because physical practice is to condition the mind to do things in a certain way. And so what the psychologist found is you could actually sit and meditate on the activity and it would condition your mind. And I had this experience. I don't know if I've told you. I mean, it's just mundane, but I grew up by the beach, and so I spent my summers body surfing, hanging out at the beach, and I really became attracted to surfing, and I would, as whenever you really want to do something, you always look at people doing it. And so I would, spend lots and lots of time watching them surf. And so finally, when I was, I think, 13, my father rented a surfboard for me, and I went out, and I just started surfing like I'd been surfing for weeks. And some kid was out there, he wanted to borrow my board or something, or he asked me, how long have you been surfing? It was my first time. He said, I can't believe it's your first time. You don't surf like it's your first time. So actually I was surfing in my mind. For many months or years I was surfing as I was watching people. And so, aside from the point that Krishna will accept it as service, it actually, by meditating that way, you may be actually unknowingly preparing yourself to do that just by rehearsing in your mind what you would do, what you would say. I have this tendency. I think of so many things that I could tell people that I think are powerful about Krishna consciousness, about my own experience in Krishna consciousness, about how I see things. And I often visualize myself like on Oprah or somewhere, some big TV show being interviewed, and saying these things and envisioning like this amazing response from the moderator and from the audience, just saying something that's a aha, a wow, yeah, and they said, I never thought of that, that's really powerful. And then saying another one and another one. So maybe someday it'll happen. But it's already happened in my mind. And the psychologists also say, if you want something to happen, you should visualize it. And one author, he designs his book and has a cover made and puts paper, blank paper, and he goes, here, see, the book is finished. Now I just have to write it. And he said, it's so much easier to write it after it's already finished. So it's a visualization. So, it's, you may be a failure, okay, you think you're a failure. Okay, why don't you meditate on being a success? Imagine successfully serving Krishna. Imagine chanting 64 rounds of Shuddhanam. Why not? Maybe it'll happen someday. But please don't get in this consciousness that I'm a failure, what's the use? It's not Krishna consciousness. It's not what Prabhupada wants. And it's heavily dominated by the mode of ignorance. And we at least should be in Sattva Guna. And Sattva Guna is very forward, it's very dynamic, it's very positive, it's very intentional, it's full of determination. No obstacle will let you down. And mode of ignorance, every obstacle is like, whoa, too much trouble to deal with that, better just go back to sleep, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah, you probably do know what I mean, and that's the problem. When I talk about Satvaguna and I say, do you know what I mean? You should say, yeah, I know what you mean. When I talk about the mode of ignorance and I say, do you know what I mean? You should say, no, Prabhu, I'm just chanting and dancing and hearing and associating. I don't really feel that way. That would be good if you don't feel that way. Congratulations. All glories to Prabhupada. Okay, so we have one more paragraph to read to finish this. This is a letter. I don't know who I wrote it to. I think on some level it is possible that you feel you deserve to suffer for not being good enough and blaming yourself. That makes sense. Yeah. So this is very interesting psychology. And I think, I was saying in a few classes back, I think, when you analyze unhealthy psychology, you see that it works on a continuum, let's say. And there's a threshold where we would, once passed, we would call it, it would be problematic for us. It would have negative effects on it. Before that threshold, it might be a little bit problematic, but it doesn't really affect our lives that much. It might discourage or depress us a little bit, but externally, it's not affecting us that much that it really changes our life or prevents us from living happy and normal and powerful and intentional and successfully. Then it hits a certain threshold, it can start causing us to be discouraged or even depressed. What's the use of going on? And so this is an example. I feel like I deserve to suffer. So I'm not good enough. And then if I don't do well, I blame myself. And almost like expect to suffer as a punishment for the things that I've done wrong, and Krishna should come and just smash me in the head, or my guru should come, or material nature should blow my house away or something. If it does, I deserve it, and if people aren't nice to me, I deserve it. And so that's getting to be a very unhealthy stage of consciousness, and that could even lead into some kind. That's obviously a huge emotional problem, but it could also lead to when you get into depression, anything that leads to depression, the next stage is it could lead to suicidal tendencies, and then we're talking about more serious personality disorder, mental illness, or so forth. So we want to. So there's the problem, and I see this, and we've talked about it. The problem is if you have that tendency, sometimes the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, when misunderstood, misapplied, feeds that tendency. Because, I left Krishna, so I should feel bad, and I don't deserve Krishna's mercy. So, and if I suffer, Bhagavatam says I should think I deserve worse. And it all works if you have a healthy psychology. It doesn't work when you don't. When you came to Krishna consciousness, not from a spiritual perspective feeling that way, not from understanding it as a philosophy feeling that way, but as a psychology, then those kinds of philosophical points tend to feed into that weak psychology and make it worse. And I'm sure you've seen this with yourself, or maybe seen it with others. So it's a problem. So again, it goes back to the point where if you're not happy in Krishna consciousness, you're not in Krishna consciousness. It's a paradox. I'm not happy in Krishna consciousness. No. It's like someone asked Prabhupada, what about bad gurus? And Prabhupada said, if he's a guru, he can't be bad. So I'm not happy in Krishna consciousness. That's a paradox. If you're in Krishna consciousness, you're happy. There's no such thing as not happy. Now, you might not be happy that conditioned souls are suffering. That's different. But personally, you're not miserable. You're not depressed. So that's important. And this first sentence where I said, you think you deserve to suffer for not being good enough and blaming yourself, that makes sense. This is where we run into the problem of a lack of self, of people who say, I can't forgive myself. And why can't we forgive ourselves? Because we feel we deserve to suffer for what we've done, And why would I want to forgive myself? Because if I forgive myself, it would alleviate the suffering. But I deserve to suffer, so I can't forgive myself, because that would be a contradiction. I need to suffer for what I've done. I need to be punished. And I don't see any better person to punish me than myself, so I'll just punish myself by making myself feel bad. And by making myself feel bad, I'll pay the debts that I should pay for the bad actions I performed. And okay, maybe in some part of your mind that makes sense, but it doesn't align with our philosophy. That's not the way a devotee thinks. A devotee may think, like Prabhupada said, I deserve to suffer for all my sins. But when a devotee thinks that way, it doesn't in any way dissuade him from surrendering. It doesn't in any way curb his enthusiasm or his intention, the power of his intention. It doesn't have that effect. So, that's where we get confused and say, but shouldn't a devotee think, I'm sinful, I'm lowly, I deserve to suffer? Isn't that what Bhagavatam says? Not only do I deserve to suffer, but I deserve to suffer more, and the fact is, yes, we do. But it's not Krishna's mood in dealing with us. And if it's not Krishna's mood, why should we think that way about ourselves? Krishna's mood as Mahaprabhu is to give mercy and to overlook our faults. So why don't we just accept mercy and overlook our faults? That would make sense, wouldn't it? Because that's what he's doing. And Prabhupada overlooked our faults, gave mercy, Prabhupada forgave us. There's a nice story I recently heard where the devotee had left Krishna consciousness. He was one of the prominent devotees and done many bad things, and he had gone off with bogus gurus. And Tamar Krishna Raj was saying, Prabhupada, I'm trying to help him, but it's gone too far. He's gone off with his bogus guru and this and that, and he's saying all these wrong things and so forth. So we just need to disconnect from him or chastise him or whatever it is. We need to just let it go. Let him go. And Prabhupada said, you do not, he said, no, you're wrong. He said, you do not understand the mercy of Lord Nityananda. He said, Lord Nityananda's forgiveness is unlimited. Wow. Write that down. Lord Nityananda's forgiveness is unlimited. That means like whatever you've done in the past, that's causing you to think that you're thinking poorly about yourself. Think now. I'm trying to get my brain to work. Let's rewind the tape and say that over again. Whatever you're thinking that's causing you to be discouraged about yourself, or to beat up, as we say, beat up yourself, then remember this mantra. Lord Nityananda's mercy, forgiveness is unlimited. So you're unlimitedly forgiven. Now, I've talked about this before. It's a philosophical point, but let's bring it up again because I don't know if you've heard me say this, but it's a very logical sequence of thinking to help you kind of overcome if you're in this mood of putting yourself down. In Kali Yuga, the qualification for spiritual life is only one. And the qualification is, you don't have qualification. I don't have it. Nobody has it. That's the qualification. Did you know that? That's the qualification. To get Lord Chaitanya's mercy, the qualification is you can't have any qualification. Just like if you're going to get welfare, or if you're going to go on some welfare program, they're going to look at your income. And if your income is very low, you qualify. If it's above a certain point, you don't qualify. So the fact that we're sinful is generally it's considered a spiritual disqualification, that we're stupid, we've taken drugs, we've committed sin in so many ways, we grew up listening to rock and roll instead of mantras, all disqualifications, right? So if that's taken in consideration, then, we would be looked at and said, okay, here's a mantra, Hare Krishna mantra, but, I need to look at your bio and your resume because I don't know if I can give it to you. So our philosophy is not like that. No bio, no resume. Do you want it? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'd like it. It looks good. Okay. I have to charge you something. Well, what's the cost? Do you have faith in this mantra that it can give love of God? And say, well, I'm willing to try. I'm open to it. Or I do have faith. Okay, you can have it. That's your qualification. That's all. It doesn't matter you didn't get good grades or your mother didn't like you or whatever, or you're not that smart, or you're overweight, or you think you're a loser, whatever. That's not the qualification. So that's a philosophical point. Therefore, from that angle of vision, you don't have a right to beat yourself up. Nobody is giving you that right. Lord Chaitanya is not giving you that right because he's not evaluating you in the way you're evaluating yourself. So we want to switch that around. Despite my disqualifications, I have a really good qualification, which is I don't have any qualifications. What do you think of that? What's your qualification? Well, my main qualification is I don't have any. Okay, you're hired. That's Lord Chaitanya. What's on your resume? It's a blank piece of paper. Okay, you're hired. That's Lord Chaitanya. Hey, you got all this stuff on your resume? You're probably puffed up. I was born in a Brahmin family. I know mantras. I can do puja. I got my Brahminical initiation when I was 8 years old. Get out of here. I don't want you. I want the fallen ones who know that they don't know anything. You think you know something. You think you're better than others. You're disqualified. So in many ways, the qualification becomes the disqualification. Doesn't it? And the disqualification really becomes our main qualification. So there's a psychology behind self-blame, which is why people want to learn to forgive themselves. Is just, I can't forgive myself because what I did was bad, which makes me bad, and therefore if I forgive myself, that would be bad on top of bad on top of bad. In other words, if I'm bad, and I know I'm bad, and I think I should suffer because I'm bad, it would be wrong to forgive myself, because if I forgive myself, then it's kind of alleviating me or pardoning me from the suffering that's due to me because I'm such a bad person, I should suffer. And therefore, I can't allow myself to forgive myself, because if I did, that would be wrong, that would be bad. And I know that I'm a wrong and bad person. And so to forgive myself would be even more wrong. So I'm not going to do it. That's also a mode of ignorance thinking, because forgiveness is a Brahminical quality. Actually, Prabhupada said, all Varnas forgive except the Vaishyas. I have to remember, because I gave a verse in Mayapur, and it was in the purport, and I can't remember. I have to go on Mayapur TV and see all the classes I gave. But in one purport, as I remember, it said, every class of men should forgive except the Vaishyas. And Bhishma Dev said forgiveness is a human quality. So he didn't even discriminate Varnas. He just said every human being, to be human, should forgive. So that being said, now you can forgive yourself for being stupid or sinful or whatever. In my analysis of this, I think the key element is not what you've done in the past, but is what you're doing now. And if you think negatively about the past, as we're discussing, it's very hard to go forward, or it becomes an impediment. And if you can go forward in the right consciousness now, that's what Prabhupada wants to see. And the problem with not being able to forgive oneself, or the problem what we're talking about here with low self-esteem, is you can't allow yourself to go forward because you think you should be punished for it, or you think you deserve some kind of suffering. But, don't worry about suffering, it'll just come. If you think you deserve suffering, don't worry about it. You don't have to give it to yourself. You'll get it. Karmically, it's there, and even non-karmically. You're just in the material world. You can't, it'll be, even if it's not your karma, someone will become the president of the United States and mess it up. And therefore, you'll have to suffer the karma of the people who voted for that person if the president does something bad. It's not a value judgment, but you can apply that to any president. As the Prabhupada said that's, you voted for him, you can't complain. It's your karma, you voted for him. So, you'll get karmic consequences everywhere. But the Krishna conscious attitude is like, okay, whatever happened in the past, that's gone, and whatever I am. And all I can do is improve from right now and go forward. And that's how Prabhupada wants us to think. And that's how he dealt with us. And that's the mode of goodness. The problem with this other thinking is that a lot of times we think it's Krishna conscious because, the acharyas are expressing all this humility and remorse. It's only Krishna conscious if it puts you in this mood of, from today forward, we're going ahead. And nothing from behind me is pulling me down, only from behind me it's pushing me forward. So, I'm the most fallen, worm and stool, no sin I did not commit, and so forth. That, if you're thinking that way and it's inspiring you to move forward in Krishna consciousness, then it's good. If you're thinking that way and it's discouraging you and it's making you think, what's the use, then that's the mode of ignorance. So you have to understand that it's not pleasing Prabhupada, not pleasing your guru to be in the mode of ignorance. It's not pleasing them to beat yourself up in a way that you can't move forward. So, for example, like when somebody did something wrong, and Prabhupada was upset, why did you do that? And questioning them. And of course the devotee would just say, I don't know, I wasn't thinking. I mean, what kind of devotee say? You do something, you weren't thinking, you forgot. I don't know, Prabhupada, I just forgot, I was so busy. So, Prabhupada would, by saying, why did you do that? Or a similar question, he will let you know you made a mistake. Like, so you get it. I should have been more conscious. I shouldn't have done that. And then the next thing Prabhupada would say, normally, in normal situation, what are we going to do now? It was like, okay, that happened. What are we going to do now because it happened? Like, I was supposed to mail something. It was supposed to get there on a certain date. I get in my car and I see, oh no, I put it into the car a week ago and I thought I mailed it, but I didn't. So what's the question? What am I going to do now? It needs to be there tomorrow. Is there a way to get it there tomorrow? So then I go to the post office. Can you get this there tomorrow? How much does it cost? And they say, we can get it there tomorrow. It costs you $12.95. So due to my stupidity, I just wasted $13. Or $13 minus the cost of a stamp, whatever they cost. So I wasted $12.50. Something like that. So that's just the way Prabhupada dealt with us. So what are you going to do now? That's why. And then you'd say, Prabhupada, I can send it out overnight and I'll just, take my own personal money. And Prabhupada said, then do it. And that was it. It was over. It was over. I would say in 95+% of the times it was over, unless it was a major blunder or a philosophical deviation or something. Or something which was extremely disruptive to the solidarity of ISKCON, or either philosophically or communally or organizationally. Then, of course, Prabhupada's going to have to deal with it in a different way. But if it was terms of a small mistake personally, or a mistake that could be easily rectified, once Prabhupada let you know you shouldn't have done it, and you feel bad, and you reconcile that. You realize that you were negligent or stupid or whatever it was. And then you've come up with a viable solution which Prabhupada approves, it's over, it's gone. In Prabhupada's mind, it's finished. It's not a strike against you. He doesn't have a scorecard. And when it happens again, he's going to say, look, you did that before, this is the second time. If you make this mistake again, then we send you to hell for 10 lifetimes. He might fire you as his personal servant, but he never did. But if you make so many mistakes, he could, right? It's possible. But the door is mystically open. Does that mean we're supposed to end class? Wow, amazing. The door opened around 9:30. You didn't know I had mystic power. I'm being invited back home for breakfast. So we will continue this discussion. This is a lot to meditate on. It's very important. And some of you may be thinking, yeah, this all sounds good, but it doesn't relate to me. But it relates to many people. So by hearing the class and understanding more clearly the problem, then you'll be able to recognize it in other people when they express themselves in certain ways, such as, I don't feel good enough, I blame myself, I deserve to suffer. Then you can see, okay, there's an issue here, we have to help this devotee. So is that okay? I can't ask you for questions because somehow or other I can't see any of you, how many people are watching, and there's no, I don't know, maybe somebody could figure out. It's just, I guess the touch screens, you accidentally touch something and then all the changes go on, or there's some update and everything that used to work doesn't work. As Krishna says, it is endlessly mutable. So I don't know if you have that experience with electronics, but you turn it off, and then turn it on again, and all of a sudden something changed. So if somebody can maybe find out, is there a mode that I'm in now on Facebook, I'm broadcasting on Facebook, is there a mode or some mode on my iPad where there's no communication from Facebook, it's just me talking, I don't know how many people I'm talking to, I can't see any of your chat. Only thing I could see was my own chat. And if you were able to watch this broadcast and hear everything and everything was good, then fantastic. And Guru Nishta will let me know, or a couple of you who are watching. A couple of you of my disciples, just tell me that you were watching and you were hearing everything was good, or tell me that there was no broadcast, I didn't see anything. Well, you wouldn't know to say that. I just need to know why this is going on. If anybody can help, then yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow's at 8 o'clock. Because I give class at 10, so I need to finish at 9, take breakfast and go. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.